Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Final Whistle. I'm Jude Binkley here with my co-host
Aria Damavandi, and we'll be talking about the latest from NFL's free agency so far, so let's get right into it.
So NFL free agency is officially underway, and we've seen some huge moves that have really shooken up the league. Technically didn't begin until the 13th, but we've been seeing, some signings and some trades since the beginning of this week, and even some smaller moves before that. But the first one I really wanted to get into that was huge for the league happened on the 11th, and we saw the Steelers trade wide receiver Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders. Aria, what are your thoughts about this trade?
I'm pretty shocked about this trade, even though I've been seeing a lot of people talking about Antonio Brown to the Raiders. I thought he was going to go to the NFC, but it turned out he was still in the AFC. So let's see how it'll shake out with them. They're also the Raiders are still trying to make some more moves to accompany Antonio Brown alongside with Derek Carr to give him more weapons on the team. So it's been an interesting free agency so far. It's been a very, very intriguing free agency for me to look at. A lot of deals, a lot of new signings. It's been pretty fun to watch. What do you think about it?
Well, I think Antonio Brown really fell into Oakland's lap. All they gave up was a third and a fifth round pick, and I think this is especially good for the Raiders, being kind of a lame duck team. They don't really have a home right now until they move into Vegas, and they need someone who's going to sell tickets. They needed a big name. Antonio Brown's for sure going to do that, but I also think that this is still good for the Steelers because they admit they screwed up. They had this bad deal with Antonio Brown and all of this troubles in the locker room. They do have $21 million in just dead money right now, but they did have the guts to pull this trigger, and they got something from it. It's really addition by subtraction in this case.
Yeah, it's been an interesting free agency. I think it's a win on the Raiders' behalf just because they got one of the best wide receivers in the league, arguably Julio Jones, those people, But let's see how it shakes out. Obviously, names are just names. You have to play to earn it, so he's been good in Steelers. He's been one of the best in Steelers, so let's see how he plays in the Raiders.
And another transaction that happened on the 11th was the Jaguars signed quarterback Nick Foles, who had been the backup for the Eagles, who had had some great success in the playoffs. It's a 4-year, $88 million contract. Aria, what are your thoughts about this?
I think that it's a big win for Jaguars just because Nick Foles was a great quarterback for the Eagles when Carson Wentz went down both times. He took them to the playoffs the second time and won them the Super Bowl the first time he was there. So I think that Nick Foles can do some good things with the Jaguars. Even though Jaguars were an AFC contender 2 years ago, I think they could be back up there with the other teams.
And it's for sure going to be interesting to watch Foles. He had great time turning around the Eagles, Super Bowl MVP, but he never really had expectations when he was with them because he was always the backup to Wentz. And now he's really going to be taking the stage. It's definitely good for the Jaguars to move on from Bortles, but now Nick Foles truly does have expectations, and he's a good addition in every way. He's a great upgrade. But if Jacksonville doesn't add more pieces, they're not going to have success.
Yeah.
They don't have the assets around Nick Foles because Nick Foles isn't the quarterback he's not an Aaron Rodgers, he's not a Drew Brees. He can't just go out and create plays. He still needs pieces and good players around him, and Jacksonville doesn't have any of that on their offense.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville has to go in and get some more wide receivers maybe to help Nick Foles in the passing game, just because in Eagles he had Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz, both phenomenal receivers and tight end. So I think that if they have a chance at this, they got to help them with weapons. Although on the running game, though, they have Leonard Fournette, who's a great running back, so that could be a plus with them.
All right, now moving on to some transactions that happened on the 12th. By far the biggest move of the offseason so far. The Browns picked up Odell Beckham Jr. from the Giants, giving up Jabril Peppers and a first-round pick and a third-round pick. Completely shocked the league. It was some huge news dropping. Aria, what did you think about all this?
Here we go again. The Browns getting another player. First it was Kareem Hunt. Now it's Odell. You never know. Maybe they can make it to the Super Bowl this time. I don't know. But they have a lot to prove right now. All they have so far is just names. Last year they showed some sort of they received some adversity and some success. So in order for this to happen, let's see how they can all work together because it's all the team chemistry instead of just names. So
And I think, the interesting narrative from this is that the Giants were really never behind Odell Beckham, even though they did pay him. They gave him a great contract, but it was some huge mismanagement from the Giants. And if I'm a New York fan, I would be upset.
Yeah.
But it was obvious they were desperate to get rid of him. And I think they honestly could have gotten more if you would have waited until the draft. You probably could have gotten something more for such a great wide receiver. But New York now going to use those picks to get a quarterback in the draft most likely. Eli's old. He's 38 years old. Even though I imagine he will be starting the season regardless of who they pick, which I personally think will be Dwayne Haskins, who will be a good fit. But the opening of the season for the Giants, it's going to be rough having old Eli and really just so much of your offense put on Saquon Barkley, who's a great player.
Yeah, one of the best running backs in the league. I think that the Giants were just impatient to wait for the draft to begin. Maybe they could have got some better, like you said, better choices for Odell instead of just trading him to the Browns. Because Browns are slowly building a dynasty right now. Because they have Baker Mayfield, a very young quarterback, and Nick Chubb, a very young running back, and two, I don't want to say young wide receivers because Landry and Odell are both mid-range, but they could play for a little bit longer. So we'll have to wait to see what happens there. But next up is the Jets signing Le'Veon Bell for a $15.5 million deal. So what do you think about that?
Well, Le'Veon Bell was the top free agent. He really does give the Jets life. It kind of quiet because it happened right after this Odell trade. But you have, one New York fan base so upset about Odell. And this is great news for Jets fans. Great news for Darnold, who's going to look to have a comeback his sophomore year with the Jets. Having some problems on the field, just having this option in the backfield will truly be good and hopefully help him develop as a quarterback. And we're going to have to see what Adam Gase can do with this offense. I don't think the Jets are a contender yet, but they're setting up to maybe have some contention in the playoffs.
Yeah. A plus for Le'Veon Bell, though, is because for him, he could do it without a good offensive line just because he's so patient waiting for the hole to open. Because you could watch his film, some of it, he stutters and then shoots the gap. So the offensive line doesn't need to be amazing, but it needs to be decent. So they might maybe get a new young offensive lines in the draft, and maybe they could be a contender, but I don't think so yet.
And then moving on to what happened yesterday on the 13th, the official start to the NFL's new year. I wanted to talk about the Ravens because they made some interesting moves, signing Earl Thomas to a 4-year, $55 million deal, and Mark Ingram 3 years for $15 million. And what are your thoughts?
I thought that the Mark Ingram was a plus for them. He's a very good, strong power running back that could just fight for those extra yards, those extra first downs, and I think that'll be a plus for them. And Earl Thomas, people say that he's too young to do it, but I think he's still got a few more years in him to make the Ravens a better secondary. Because they got rid of Eric Weddle. They had some cap space because Eric Weddle went to the Rams, my team. So they might have some good come out of Earl Thomas. I think that they could they'll probably add some more to the defensive side because they got rid of Terrell Suggs and C.J. Mosley. So we'll have to see what happens there. But what do you think about this?
I think Thomas is an incredible player, one of the top free agents. I do personally think he'll be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And, the Ravens secondary was good. This makes it better for sure. And both of these signings are great fits for the Ravens system that they have. What Earl Thomas is going to add to their secondary and what Mark Ingram is going to add to their backfield. And I'm going to, expect a great race in the AFC North between the Ravens and the Browns with these moves we've seen. It's going to be interesting to watch, and it's weird to think of, especially the Browns kind of coming out of a 20-year-long rebuild.
It used to be like the Steelers owning it, and now the Browns are coming up. So,
and this is, I looked at the numbers. This is the best Super Bowl odds the Browns have had since Bill Belichick was their coach,
which is 20 years,
weird to think about. Yeah, about 20 years.
Yeah. A few other notable mentions was Trey Flowers going to the Lions for a 5-year, $90 million deal. What do you think about that?
Well, New England didn't use their franchise tag on him, and now he's being paid as one of the best pass rushers in the league, which I do think he is.
He's a great pass rusher, so I think Lions can get some good out of him alongside Ansah, who's another great pass rusher there. So I think that could be a good deal for them.
And then we saw safety Landon Collins go to the Redskins for 6 years, $84 million,
That's a lot.
massive contract, but Washington did need a safety. That's a position they've been lacking at for years. And, he had the chance to re-sign with the Giants. Maybe he'll make him regret it, but still, $84 million is a lot of money.
Too. Redskins and Giants both in the same division. Another one is Anthony Barr moving on from the Minnesota Vikings onto the Jets, which can be another great deal for them in the defensive side of the ball. He's a great linebacker, good tackler, so I think that could be a good fit for them. What do you think about that?
Well, actually, he was going to sign with the Jets, then he flipped, and he decided to re-sign with the Vikings.
Oh, he re-signed with them?
Yes, so that's the 5 years, $67.5 million. He's a good player.
My bad. I thought he got signed to the Jets.
Yeah, he was going to, and then he flipped and he decided to come back. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and he was like a verbal commit, kind of what we saw with Bell and the Bills.
Disregard what I said. He clearly signed back with the Vikings.
Yeah, so he's back with the Vikings. He's a good player, a good linebacker, but Minnesota could have used that money elsewhere. They really need an offensive line, and they should have put that cap space and that money back into it.
I thought it would have been a good trade, honestly, for Minnesota to get rid of him to the Jets. They would have cleared up a lot of cap space and maybe get some more offensive line people, some other people that could help Kirk Cousins, because he clearly couldn't get so much time there last season. He got sacked many times. They have great wide receivers already, so let's see what happens next to them.
I wouldn't give this signing a super high grade. I think it's kind of questionable.
Like a B- or C+ or something like that.
Something even more questionable,
even worse.
Just because of the contract, is what the Jets did end up signing was C.J. Mosley. 5 years, $85 million. The Jets overpaid. They gave him a blank check and just said, write whatever you want. The Jets wanted to add a defensive talent on their defense, but it came at a massive cost to them, and that is really because of Anthony Barr going back to the Vikings. I think they just kind of they flipped out and they just said, here, we need you to take all of this money, and they had the cap space, but
it's an interesting with it's the interesting thing with the Ravens, because they got rid of both of their elite defensive players. They got rid of Terrell Suggs and C.J. Mosley. They both sent them off, but they kind of brought some other players back in to try and fill in for him, but I just think that it's going to take some time to fill in with the team chemistry, their schemes of play, so we'll have to see about that. Next up, we got defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson to the Browns on a 3-year, $36 million deal. I don't know about this. He's a decent player. I don't know if that's enough money. I mean, I don't know if that's I feel like they overpaid a little bit for $36 million. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I'm just looking at their front four, which is kind of crazy right now. Just these strong additions to the Browns, because their front four on starting day is going to be Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson now, Larry Ogunjobi, or however you say that, and they also brought in Oliver Vernon. So that front four is scary. Yeah. If I'm Ben Roethlisberger, I'd be scared right now. So I think that's interesting, and so far I think winning. Who's won free agency this first week? The Browns and Oakland with their signings. And it's weird to think of a world where the Browns are doing this well, this successful, but they're going to be a contender.
I'm definitely shocked on the Browns' moves this offseason. Because last year, the last offseason, they brought in some new players in the draft, which was great. Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb. And now they just made a big splash in the offseason now so far. And it just begun a couple days ago. So God knows what's next to come.
And John Dorsey is really turning this team around. Baker Mayfield has been hot. What we saw at the end of the season. The Browns almost made the playoffs. And just this great front office and this great management coming from the Browns, they really need to be complimented on that, because I think a lot of that does come down to Dorsey and what he's done and the experience he's brought in.
They were so patient.
And getting rid of Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, because they were gone they were like 0-16, 0-15 the last 3 or 4 seasons ago, and now they just came back up. So I thought that their patience was very well, that they waited for this time to strike, and it paid off.
Well, they waited long enough. It's been 20 years.
Browns fans want something to cheer about.
And they'll get that this time.
Yeah. So thank you for watching The Final Whistle. Jude and Aria signing off. We'll be back for a couple next week for a new episode, more drama. It could be basketball, football. We'll have to wait to see. We'll see you guys.